All right, so it's 2 past. Let's kick off. Welcome everyone to MadeFor Talks, where we're welcoming inspiring people from inspiring brands to celebrate the work they do to deliver great CX. We're very happy to have Oleg Koss, founder of Lanka.CX, with us today as our guest speaker. He's going to dive deeper into the question of how to digitize customers who are happy without modern tech. But before I hand over, I also want to quickly introduce MadeFor and myself. So my name is Barbara van der Linde. I will be your host of today, so making sure that everything works properly, and I'm here on behalf of MadeFor. So for those of you unfamiliar with MadeFor, we're a customer experience learning organization. We provide bootcamps that help individuals and teams, as it says, grow and stay competitive in a rapidly changing digital world, teaching in multiple different CX capabilities, as we refer to, so service design, UX, product management, strategy, and customer science. If you would like to have a look, there's a little QR code here on the bottom right, so you can go to our website and have a look at what type of bootcamps we offer if you're interested in that. And in the meantime, during today's talk, if you would like to snap some shots or share anything about your experience today, please make sure to do that using the hashtags that you see on screen and tagging us, because we'd always love to see it. And now, without further ado, I would love to hand over to Oleg. Oleg, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Hold on a second. I need to remember how to use Zoom. Can you see my screen now? Yeah, okay. So again, welcome. Thank you for joining. I'll start with the question which became awkward, which is the question, how are you? It is an awkward question in Ukraine right now, because we don't really have a good vocabulary for the war times. So if you ask Ukrainian, how are you, be prepared that he will give you some details. So my details are, I am in Kiev in Ukraine, in a relatively safe part of the city. And well, so I'm not at big risk. My family is abroad. So again, they are safe, and I definitely suffer less than a lot of my compatriots. So that's why I actually enjoy parts of the peaceful life, like presenting our cases. Let me first introduce my team, my agency. It's called Lanka. Actually, Oleg and Natalia are here on the presentation. We are a boutique agency in Ukraine, but at the same time, we are the biggest service design agency in Ukraine. We are 5 people. And speaking about us, I think what's important, we are all career changers, and we all have strong business background before we became service designers. So on the scale from business design to interaction design, we are definitely closer to the business design. Like, for example, me, I'm still very bad at drawing or making something nice. Our agency exists from 2016. Most of our clients are in Ukraine. We work across industries. We did projects in banking, in retail, in B2B, in e-commerce. Also, we did a couple of projects abroad. And yes, quite often, actually, in our experience, we faced the same challenge, and this is the challenge of my today's presentation, which is, okay, we have a nice digital tool. Some customers are happy to use it. They give us, I don't know, positive feedback, nice reviews on the App Store, etc. And then there is another half of customers who say, yeah, your tools are nice, but I would prefer to use it in the old way. And this is a challenge, because as the business, you want them to move to the digital channels. Well, it's to save your cost, to increase your profits, but people are not really interested in it. So, I mean, how do you move them? And if you are short of time, basically there are 3 takeaways from my presentation, 3 main ideas I want to introduce. So first of all, it's not about your product. You need to think how your product, your digital part of the product, fit into the daily routines of your customers. Because they are different than you need to understand their context, and typically to understand the context of your customer, not the context of your product, but the context of your customer, you need to research a broader journey than the journey with your product. And when you do this research, when you study the customer journey of your customer, you need to pay to as many details as you can. And basically, what I'm going to present today is 3 cases. How does it work? So what could be the broader journey? What kind of details may matter? And the first case I want to present, it's in banking. And here, Ukraine is very advanced. So as far as I know, I've seen a lot of data. We are one among the most cashless societies as such. We have a high penetration of Apple Pay, Google Pay, contactless payments, etc. Even now in the war times, I mean, I am in Kiev now for more than a month, and I didn't use cash since I came back to the city. So you literally don't need cash when you live in the city. Even when you go to the farmer's market, you still can pay for the goods with the peer-to-peer transactions to the card of the seller, even if they are, I don't know, like a farmer from the neighbor village. I mean, we are really cashless society. And our banking products are rather great. As you can see, our top banks have very good ratings on the App Store. So I mean, we do have a good digital banking. And yet, 30% of the population, when they receive information that they've got their salary, they go to the ATM, withdraw all cash or almost all cash, and use cash during the month. And you need to understand, customers are happy. They are fine with the cash. ATMs are abundant. Fees are close to zero. So everything is perfect for the customer. But the bank is actually losing money on every such a customer, because it costs money to process cash, and you don't get fees for the online payment. So the bank is really losing money with each such client. So there is a challenge, how you convince those people to start using cash. And probably you should start with the customer. So guess, who are those people? Those people who still use cash in the 21st century. I guess you imagine some old people who are not really using smartphones, etc. It's true. Of course, the average age of people who use cash is slightly higher than the average population. But no, there are a lot of modern people who would even have a banking application on their smartphone, and still they would withdraw most of the cash from the ATM. So imagine you are our agency. Imagine you need to solve this challenge. What would be the question you are asking to the customer to understand the context, to understand why they still withdraw cash when they're modern people with everything possible? So can you probably speak up or put in the chat what would be the questions that you ask the customers to understand the situation? Yeah, they used to cash, they like cash, etc. But I mean, you need to understand why. What would be the question? What would you research? Of course, you can see how they withdraw cash, but you know, there are no problems there. Yeah, it's a good question. Don't you trust the bank? What was the cash for is a good one. Because yes, when we did the interviews, of course, we did many interviews with the customers. Trust is an issue with some customers. And well, there is not so much service designer can do about the trust, though it's a challenge. Yes, is there anything they pay in cash that they can't otherwise, etc.? It's true, and we did the following. Instead of what's the benefit of using cash? Yeah, you know, for most of the questions, they would say, okay, I pay with cash for everything. There is no problem paying with the credit card. I know how to use the credit card. I just used to use cash. I like it. So, I mean, there is no so much inside. So what we did is we decided to see the journey, which is like a pay cycle of the person. Most Ukrainians, we are quite poor country. They live from paycheck to the paycheck. So we just looked, what do they do with the cash over the months? And what we discovered is that once they are informed that the salary is on the account, they withdraw the cash, and what they do at home immediately is they start to split this cash into the buckets. Like I set aside some money to pay a loan in another bank. I set aside some money for the holiday. I set aside some money, I will give it to the parents. Set aside money that I will share with my spouse because we have a joint budget, etc. So they set aside most of the money, and then the rest that they keep for the daily routine. Again, they are not putting all the money into the wallet, but they put it portion by portion. And then it became obvious. Actually, with cash, they manage their budget. Because when you use your payment card, you get your salary, you see a figure like an amount. You see an amount like, I don't know, on the first day of month, you see, I don't know, 20,000 hryvnias, and then it's reducing. But because you have so many ways to spend the money, you don't really feel in control. And closer to the end of the month, you are afraid that you will run out of money and you will not be able to pay the bills, etc. So using cash is the best way for them to manage their budgets. They don't have any other solution. So it became obvious for us that in order to move these people from cash to cashless society, we need to help them to do something, not with the application, not with online banking, but with managing their budget electronically. And this is actually our first prototype. So instead of preparing the wireframes, we just picked several respondents and we asked them to distribute their monthly income, monthly salary into the expenses they plan to spend. And it was interesting to see that actually they had like 3 selections. So they would plan something for a year, something for the next season, like clothes, for example, and their monthly expenses. And then they would separate them. Sorry, this doesn't work. So what they need and what they want, and there are some reserve. So we could see that it's quite a lot of budget lines, and of course different people had slightly different composition. And by this early prototyping, which was really low-fi prototyping, we learned one more barrier, which is a significant one. In most cases, the budget is a family business. So despite the fact that this is your private account in the bank that is used to get the salary, the budget is something you do with your spouse, with your parents, whoever lives with you. And actually, there is one problem with the digital tools. It brings undesired transparency. Like, for example, during the interview, one couple discovered that fortunately the price for the hockey stick and price for the cosmetics are roughly equal, so they are not angry at each other for hiding some expenses. And those stuff became actually part of the, I mean, those are the barriers that might happen for people to become digital. It has nothing to do with the application, with the channels, with the digital fluency, etc. But that were the insights. So in the end of the day, the bank, which wants their customers to stop using cash and start using digital tools, would help to provide a customer a convenient way to budget expenses and to budget them with their relatives. And if they trust each other, they would probably manage. So that's like the change of the perspective for the service. I'll move to the next case, and the next case is about e-commerce. Again, e-commerce is quite popular in Ukraine. Like 70% of Ukrainians buy some things online. I was even surprised, like every second smartphone owners would have OLX or AliExpress application installed on their phone. So, I mean, e-commerce is popular. But grocery shopping, so buying products, is not, buying food is not that popular in Ukraine. Only 10% of people buying online. And again, there is no problem with the existing channel. So both brick and mortar stores and electronic services for the grocery food, they are good, they are advanced, they provide fast delivery, etc. So there is nothing wrong with both experiences. They are fine. But yet only 10% of people buy groceries online. And of course, some retailers would like this percentage to grow. So may I ask you now, which journey would you analyze to understand why people don't buy groceries online? What would be probably like a beginning and the end of the journey? If it's easier for you to speak up, you can speak up because we are not that many on the call. Actual grocery shopping at the store, browsing habits. People don't trust the sellers. Yeah, it's true, they don't sometimes, but they manage somehow. They somehow trust the sellers of the much more expensive electronics. Planning meals for the week. This is a nice one. Okay, in the end of the day, it appears that we would have to see their grocery shoppings in the past couple of weeks. So this is what we did. So we picked a lot of families and we would ask them, could you explain us what did you buy during the past 2-3 weeks and why? And here we actually had two clear patterns emerged. I don't think they are of a big surprise to you. So there are households, families who would buy, would do a weekly shopping or even bi-weekly shopping, buying most of the stuff in some supermarket. And then from time to time, they would make some small purchases. But others would buy a small bag of groceries almost every day. And it was interesting to see that they might be living in the same neighborhoods, have very similar income, sometimes even similar household composition, but they would behave in a very different way. Of course, we were curious to see why. I'm sorry, I'll read the chat because maybe there are some comments. What kind of groceries they are purchasing? Yeah, it makes sense. What kind of groceries they buy, how the home delivery works. Yes, it is important, but you see, you are still focusing on the product, like, or let's say the products you are selling. And we wanted to take a step back to see on the whole context. And actually, we saw not 2, but 3 segments. And I'm pretty sure you will relate to one of them. So there is one segment for whom food is a hobby. So they like cooking, they pay attention to the quality of the products, they like to pick the nicest apples, they like to try new vegetables. When they shop, they think in terms of recipes. Like, I want to cook borscht, I want to buy all the stuff you need for the meal, etc., etc. So it's a hobby for them. And going shopping is actually an enjoyable part of their life, and they do it often. I mean, that's logical. Then there are families which don't like shopping as such, so they try to do it as infrequent as possible, like making bulk purchases. And yet we saw the third segment. Those were like the people who are not that much into food, who don't like shopping, but still go to the shop almost every day. But why? I mean, how come half the people don't like go shopping and they don't, and another half is don't like shopping but they do? I will sound very sexist here. I apologize for that, but physically, ladies, most of them don't like carrying big weight. I mean, it's heavy and it's difficult. So if you don't have a carrier in your household, in your family, you would go to the shop every second day just because it is heavy for you to bring the products. Even if you have a car, still carrying the bags to the car, taking them out of the car, bringing them to your apartments is heavy. We saw a repetitive pattern when a lady would do the shopping on her own, and then she would come to the house, call the husband, and the husband will come out to pick up the bags and carry them to the apartment. And again, that was the pattern. That were not like strange things. And now looking at these three segments, which segment do you think is the most prone for the online shopping? Who were the families which would be using online shopping most often? With young kids? At least we didn't research in this way. We would expect that people who don't like shopping and those who don't want to carry heavy stuff should be the ones who switch online. But that's not the case. Families who typically don't spend much time on shopping were the ones who were moving online easier than those who has to go to the shop every day. And this actually was a big surprise for us. So we returned back to the journeys and we were trying to see what's wrong about these routines. What are we missing something? Why is it like that? And actually, yes, there is one very important touch point in the journey of weekly purchases, a very important artifact or tool. No, it's not the motivation. It's a shopping list. People who go to the shop once a week, they tend to have a shopping list. It might be electronic one, it might be just notes in the phone, it might be prepared on paper. Sometimes it's even in their heads, but they clearly have the shopping list. Like, I need to buy 3 liters of milk, 2 dozens of eggs, half a kilo of cheese, etc., etc., etc. So you have this list. And people who buy groceries every other day, they don't have a shopping list because they buy very few products in the small quantities. So they simply remember, I'm running out of milk. So tomorrow I'm buying milk and maybe a bread. And the next day I'm buying a cheese because I'm running out of cheese. So they don't have a shopping list. And this actually prevents them from moving online. Because when you do your online groceries, you would need to, you are not making an order for tomorrow. You are making an order for a week anyway. It's just more convenient for you. And then when you start preparing your first order, you have no clue how many bottles of milk do you need, how many, how much cheese, how much veggies, etc. So you simply don't know how much you consume for a week. So you are not ready to make an order. And that was the barrier which prevented them, because those who were, those who buy groceries every week, they have a shopping list. So they just replicate the shopping list online and they get their food delivered. Those who don't have a shopping list struggle to prepare one. Again, that's not obvious barrier, but after several tries, we confirmed that this is the case. And what's funny, that the moment you realize that in order to convert customers, you need to prepare a shopping list, as a grocery seller, you know that you can prepare it because you have all the purchase history, you have a loyalty card, you know better than your customers how much they buy and what they would need for the next week or so. So instead of asking the customer to make a cart full of products, you can create a cart full of products and let the customer to delete some of them, which the customer doesn't really need for the next week. So that would be the solution. So it turns upside down, and this shopping list stuff was very interesting for us. And when we were preparing this presentation, Barbara asked me about, how do you come to such a conclusion? This is a question which is often asked, but okay, it's nice you noticed this strange pattern that you need to have a carrier and then the shopping list, and then this is the barrier. We I mean, the recipe in the very few words is the following. When you do the interview, you focus on very many little details, and you never know which details will be important in the afterwards. So instead of doing like, I don't know, 30 minutes interview, you do an interview for an hour and a half, asking for as many details as possible without knowing if they will be beneficial to you or not. And then having all this data, you actually find similarities and differences in the behavior of different customers, and then look for patterns. And the last step is always like asking the very powerful question, how come? So how come people who love food and who don't love food shop frequently? How come one family with the car buys every week and another one buys every day, etc., etc. So you really find similarities and differences. We could be probably running a whole day boot camp explaining the methodology in details, because we really have like a step-by-step instructions here. But now, without much detail, I mean, just focus on the details and look for the patterns. And then with some experience, you start seeing the picture. Because again, what the insights I shared, even the customers didn't know that this is their barrier. They couldn't be telling us in advance. And now moving to the last case, this is the recent one. This is about current times. And as many Ukrainians, yes, Oleg.
There is interesting question in chat regarding the previous case, so I think it would be.
Yeah, give me a second. So okay, the motivation for the shop, because I mean, if you are a frequent buyer, at least in Ukraine, so I mean, if you are shopping every day, it means every day you will go across several shops. So there is a big chance that at least part of the like household basket is bought in the separate shop. So if you are a big retailer and you want to grab as biggest share of purchases as possible, you want people to move online and actually make it possible for the customer to buy everything in one place. Because of course, the person who hates shopping will be buying everything is possible online in the same space. So it's actually, it would increase your share of sales if you move a frequent customer online. So that's the motivation. Okay, coming back to the situation in Ukraine. As you know, millions of Ukrainians left the country, and they are mostly mothers and children. And of course, a lot of families are separated. Like my family is now in Germany. Because, I mean, we need a connection, of course. Many operators in the European Union actually made a lot of support to Ukrainians, like providing free calls to Ukraine, free bundles, free SIM cards, and it is appreciated. And one of the operators in Central Europe asked us to help them to adapt their value proposition to the needs of the Ukrainians who come to the country. And actually, I mean, we had to answer the questions like, what are the specific needs they have? What's different between them and the regular population? What are the good channels and messages for the promotion? So how Ukrainians would discover those offers? And of course, what will be the difference in the usage patterns between, again, local customers and Ukrainian customers? Guess what was the journey? What would we study as the researcher here? Thank you. Okay, actually, what we did, I'll touch it. It's very interesting. Adriana, the daily needs makes perfect sense. Unfortunately, the first 2 weeks when Ukrainians get a SIM card in their new country, there are no daily needs. I mean, every day is very different from the previous one. So it's So the journey we had to study is actually a refugee journey, like including the physical journey. Because to put you into perspective, like my family woke up 5 a.m. the first day of war. I mean, we knew it could be coming, but we didn't expect it coming. So it took us few hours to prepare ourselves, get everything and leave the house without any clear plan of where we are heading, where we are sleeping the next night and the next night and the next night. So most people who left, they had a very limited belonging. They have no plan. They have very limited experience with roaming because, again, we are a poor country, not so many people travel frequently. Then you cross typically several borders. Like again, my family crossed Hungarian border, then they arrived in Austria, and then they finally settled in Germany. And then once you more or less settle, you immediately need to apply for the visa and to get some bank account. And yes, you need some local connection. So it's all the mess, and it's happening very quickly. And when we listened to the stories, it became apparent. So in this case, it's not actually the context that matter, but also the rapid change of context. So in Ukraine, we have a very cheap mobile connection with very big bundles. You don't really pay attention at the mobile services. I mean, I mean, they are not any topic of the discussion, any significant part of your budget, etc. So if you need help, you typically have an advisor. You have someone you know who could help you with the mobile connection in case you need help. I mean, you don't really an expert in the field. And then it all changes dramatically when you move. Your behavior changes. You need bigger bundles. The bundles are more expensive and actually smaller in volume at the same time. And the problem is that you don't know anybody who could help you because, I mean, like your friends probably in Ukraine or in a different country. So it's this huge change of context that actually prevent people from making any rational or logical decision. And once you choose the SIM card, choose an operator, choose the phone number, you feel like you are stuck with it because you probably has given it to several organizations, etc. So it's not so easy to change it anymore. And then when we start to segment the customers, it was interesting to see that there were people, of course, who didn't struggle with the communication. And there were those who were either experts in telecommunications, like, for example, they worked in a mobile operator before, or just simply they are good at understanding the tariffs. And another ones were the ones who had enough money, like who would have a remote job or have good savings, etc. So choosing the wrong tariff is not a problem for them because, I mean, they still have enough of money. But as you can guess, majority of those who migrated, they were in exactly the opposite segment. So you are very limited in terms of funds, and you are not an expert because there are not so many experts of mobile tariffs in Ukraine. And thus, I cannot go into very many details like what we offered because it's a recent case and it's with the NDA. But we focused on the few things, like we focused on finding the right channels, because when you know the journey, I mean, like a physical journey of the potential customer, you understand what are the right touch points when they will be ready to listen. We structured the offers of the operator for the non-expert. So, for example, we tried not to use any units like gigabytes or minutes because, I mean, they made very little sense to them. Like only telecom expert would mention the units to us in the interviews. And of course, we also redesigned the onboarding process of the subscriber because, I mean, you are designing for the novice. Again, just to give you a perspective, today my wife called me from Germany asking, because I'm her expert for the telco. So she was calling me from Germany asking how she can top up her German SIM card. Because she knew only one way. She opens her mobile application of the bank, types in her phone number, and the phone card is topped up. Apparently in Germany, you need to link your bank account to your SIM card, which is something she has never done. And I mean, I was surprised that it's so difficult to top up the account because, I mean, it's working quite differently in Ukraine. So those were like the outcomes. So again, to the takeaways, the same takeaways. When we are speaking about introducing digital products and digital channels to your customers, consider the life journey of the customer. Forget about your product for a minute, see how the life of the customer goes. To understand, choose the right customer journey. Again, it's like a life journey of the customer. It's not a user journey of your product. And pay attention to the little details. And the challenge is you never know which little details would matter. So just gather everything and then make sense out of them. And I should confess, this is not as easy as it might sound. Last year, we are the service design agency. We hired an external service designer who would help us to see our services from the point of view of our customers. Because once you are inside the business, I mean, still you are sure it's difficult to forget about your product. So if at some point you would need the help of looking at your business from the outside perspective, let us know and we will be happy to help. And well, that's the last slide. I appreciate your interest in the presentation. I believe there will be some questions at the end, but Barbara, are we asking them or we tell them? Okay.
Yeah, first of all, indeed, big round of applause, either a silence clap or an actual round of applause. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us, these super interesting case studies. It has been, as I think Adriana as well said in the chat, super eye-opening also to get some more insight and also like the horrible situation, of course, that you're in nowadays, but also some other super amazing, inspiring insights that you were able to share with the other case studies. So thanks so much for that. Indeed, in the meantime, we have a couple of minutes left. So if you have any questions, I saw that there was already a lot of participation in the chat, but if there's anything that you still want to ask, please put it in the chat or feel free to unmute. Then we can have a quick Q&A session to just check in. Maybe there's something about the banking case study you want to ask, or the online groceries, or of course the last case study that you want to still ask some questions about. This is your chance. So I'm going to quickly check in the chat if there are any questions. David is very pleased that there was no mention of AI and the metaverse. So thanks for that.
I can elaborate on that, but I think that's the tool, that's not the aim.
All right.
Anyone? Basics.
I do have a question, please. Yes, thank you, first of all, for like Adriana said, getting back to basics, because honestly, everyone wants what's shiny now, and they're forgetting what you said is very important, or like pay attention to the journey. And a lot of people aren't doing that. They're saying, oh, this is shiny, I'm going to use it, and they have no regard for the journey whatsoever. I'm quite curious about the amount of time that it takes to do that level of research. And because it's something that I don't talk about AI and automation and all of that as a first step. I do what you do. And with my clients, they want something yesterday. So they'll rush me, and then they'll give me no time to do the actual work. And usually these things take the shortest I've ever been able to do it is 3 weeks. But that was for a very small sample. So just an idea of how long each piece of research took.
Mm-hmm. I think we were blessed. We had enough clients in Ukraine to say no to everyone who wouldn't give us time for the research. So unless there is a research, we wouldn't go for the project. I mean, like, okay, come up with some ideas. I mean, we wouldn't do it.
The project. Yeah, I just wanted to add that the project with the refugees was really rapid. It was not typical for us, but we understood that the situation is actually also changing for them. It's settling down, and so I think it took like 10 days. Yeah, 10 days.
10 days with the recommendation. So the actual research took like 5 to 6 days. So
yeah,
but you can do it faster if you just put enough resources into it. And I think what's important is the methodology. As I told, it's quite long to explain in the short session, but I mean it's really step-by-step methodology, and it helps you to focus on the details, even if you didn't pay attention from the beginning to them. While a point quant will be, of course, I mean, yes, you start with the qualitative, because I mean, you cannot come up with the idea that you need to ask in the quantitative research, is your husband physically capable of carrying 2 bags 10 kilo each? I mean, you wouldn't come up with this idea before you do the qualitative research. And then you know that it's like absolutely essential for segmenting customers if there is anyone who can carry weight or not. So always qual before quant.
I see a thumbs up from Adriana, so thanks so much. We have a couple of minutes left. Any last questions before I'm going to ask the last question of today? Feel free to unmute or just throw something in the chat still. If not, or if you just think about it when I am wrapping up, then we will make sure to answer to you on email. And I think, as Oleg has also already shared his details here, you can always reach out to him or to us, of course, and we will make sure that you get your question answered. Again, if there are no further questions, a big thank you to Oleg and also all the other amazing people from Lanka.CX that joined us today. As a very final thing, I would like to ask everyone for a quick pulse check-in, how they would rate their overall experience during today's talk. So that's going to be launched now. If you can just simply vote, 1 being the lowest score and 10 being the highest score, that will be much appreciated for us to always optimize your experience. Last big thank you then also for everyone joining in with us today, and we're hoping to see you in one of our next talks. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for joining.
Thank you for the interest, and thank you for very interesting questions.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.